We're going to do something different this morning. I'm not sure that I've ever done it before. My Bible's back there behind me, and I'm probably not going to grab it today. Yeah. Many of you know for several years now, the Lord has been changing my life. Now, He saved me when I was 15. Obviously, He's been changing me for a long, long time. But recently, God began to get my attention and began to teach me things and allow me to truly learn them, not just know them, but to begin to live them. To give you an example of a few things. One, thanks living. Not Thanksgiving that comes around once a year or every now and then when I think something grand happens, but thanks living. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Thanks living. Here's another one. Expectations. My expectations of what I think life ought to be, what my spouse ought to be, what my kids ought to be, what people ought to do. Learning, as in Psalm 62:5, to let the Lord and only the Lord be my expectation. And so I wake up every morning with one expectation, and that is whatever it is that He wants. I don't have a plan or agenda. I'm His servant. He's my master, and I just live the day He puts in front of me with the people He brings around me. Good stuff. I could give you other examples, but that's not our topic. I will say this. Yesterday morning, the Lord gave me faith to believe a new thing that's coming in my life. And I am excited because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so when God gives you faith for something, fasten your seatbelt because it's coming. And so stay tuned. I'm sure that will be on its way. But over the last couple months, the Lord has had me thinking over some things. I believe another aspect of changing my life, and I want to share those thoughts with you this morning. We wrapped up, for those of you who don't know, our study of the book of Romans verse by verse, and we've got 1 Corinthians ahead of us, and it'll probably be the first of the year before we jump into 1 Corinthians. The 26th, I think you want to be here. Selah Sunday, which is another thing we've never done, but you'll want to be here for Selah Sunday. But I'm gonna get hip this morning. Or, I don't know, hip. That tells you how unhip I am, right? I'm going to use my phone. I've got some verses that I've been mulling over. They're just in my phone. And I want to share some thoughts. God's doing something in me, and I believe it'll benefit you as well. In the beginning of the scripture, when we first start reading of creation, we're told something specific about the first day and every consecutive day afterwards. There's an evening and a morning. First day. The evening and the morning, the second day. The evening and the morning, the third day. And every consecutive day, and that has been the case with every day that has passed. Evening and morning. Interesting evening and morning, isn't it? Because we go morning and evening. Now, the title of our study is Morning and Evening because I want to be able to connect with you. I don't want to lose you, but that changed under the Gregorian calendar, which was revised of the Julian calendar. We start at midnight and that kind of thing. But in biblical times, God starts in the evening. He starts in darkness and He moves us into light. There's a coming of light. There's a moving into light with Him. So there was evening and morning. And much of life is like that. Life is a journey. And how we start a thing and end a thing is important. Now, don't get me wrong. What happens in the middle is important too. But how we start and how we finish sets the tone and the tenor, I believe, of everything that happens in the middle. And for years, my starting and ending wasn't that good. And as a result, a lot of the middle wasn't either. Now, you and I can't really control much of what happens in a day. We don't know what's coming in a particular day. We can't control the product. But I do believe that God has given us the ability to control to a large degree the process. The process. How we start it and how we end it. And as I study every week, every morning, in the Psalms as part of my quiet time, I began to notice a pattern, an idea of this evening and morning, this morning and evening, and how many verses address it. And so that's what, if you'll permit me today, I'd like to share with you. So I believe we've got some slides up here so you can follow along with our first verse and our first thought. In starting the day, we need to awaken with anticipation. Awaken with anticipation. Now, I've lost many of you right off the bat. Let me read this verse to you. It's Psalm 57:8. The psalmist says, "Awake up, my glory. Awake, psaltery and harp. I myself will awake early." Now I just lost most of the rest of you. Awake up, the psalmist says. Now, don't answer out loud, but I want to ask you to ask yourself honestly, how many of you wake up with anticipation? Or how many of you think, oh, I too was once like you. Awake, the psalmist says. But interesting, the psalmist says, awake up my glory. Isn't that an interesting thought? What does it mean to awake up my glory? Well, the scripture is always the best commentary of the scripture. And in Psalm 4, the psalmist says this, "Thou, O Lord, are a shield to me." And then he says, "My glory and the lifter of mine head." So the psalmist says, "You're my glory, Lord." And in this verse, he says, "Awake my glory." So the psalmist is really saying, Lord, wake up in me. Awaken with anticipation. Every morning, God is about to do something. In me, through me, for me. You know, the scripture tells us that we don't have a lot of days. As a matter of fact, in Psalm 90, Moses says, "Teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom." We don't have many, and we definitely don't have any to waste. But if you're anything like me, you've probably wasted a lot of days. And I probably have less days ahead of me than I have behind me. And for those days I have left, I want to awake my glory. I want to awaken with anticipation. Do you know that God is working right now? He's working. In this room, God is at work. As a matter of fact, his son, Jesus, who we were celebrating with the kids' choir, his coming. He worked on the Sabbath. He did some healing, and the religious folks got bent out of shape because it broke their rule. They didn't like it. And Jesus' response to those people was this: "My Father worked hitherto, and I work." When my oldest son was really, really young, we were starving. I was in sales and terrible at it. And I worked all the time and had very little to show for it. But I wouldn't be at little activities and sports things and birthday parties and all of that because I was working. And you'd ask Tyler, "Where's Dad?" And he would say, "Working." He's working. Our Heavenly Father is always working. If we would get that, if we would grasp that, it would help us to awaken with anticipation. What is God going to do today? Some of you have already given up on the day. Some of you didn't wake up on the right side of the bed, or maybe you didn't feel so good, or the rainy weather's got you hurting here, there, or whatever, and you just kind of gave the day up. Do you know that most people, Christians including, spend most of their time and decisions based on how they feel? Can any of you tell me chapter and verse where that should be how we live our lives? The psalmist says, "Oh, wake up, my glory. Lord, wake up in me." Now that will cause you to get excited about the day. Look at this verse, Psalm 130, verse 6. "My soul waiteth for the Lord more than they that watch for the morning. I say more than they that watch for the morning." The psalmist says, Lord, I'm waiting on you. I'm anticipating you, what you're going to do, what you're going to say, how you're going to work. I'm waiting. I'm watching for you more than they that watch for the morning. Now, this watching for the morning could be a military picture. Those who had watched through the night, making sure they were on guard in case the enemy would make an advancement unexpectedly, or when we were least prepared or ready, waiting and longing for that little ray of light for the day, because in the day, well, we have an advantage. Or it could be an illustration of the priesthood, where the priests were waiting anticipation for the first sign of the morning in preparation for the sacrifice to start the day. Be that as it may, the psalmist is like them that wait for the morning. I'm waiting for you, Lord. I can't wait. I mean, I'm ready. I wasn't planning on doing that, but that got your attention. That woke some of you up, right? It's pretty good, too. Thank you, Lord. Awaken my glory, the psalmist says. I believe God's children should awaken with anticipation. Do you know that the word enthusiasm is a compound word that comes from in theos, in God, or God within? If God is in you, how can you not be enthusiastic? Do you know that God has a plan and a purpose for each one of our lives? Do you know He hasn't forgot you? He hasn't given up on His plans and purpose for your life. You may be here this morning, you're dealing with sickness. Maybe you're dealing with financial problems or relational problems or marriage problems, or maybe you got problems with your children. Does that change any of this? It shouldn't. If you'll go back and look at some of these Psalms that we're going to take little snippets from, they're not these on the mountaintop Psalms. In many of them, David is in this bad place, and yet he's saying, awake my glory. I'm waiting for you, Lord, as they that watch for the morning. And he says, more than them. Isn't that interesting? David says, I want to wake up before I wake up. I want to beat the buzzer. Now, both of my sons are going to know what I'm about to say because I've said it so many times. I am not a snoozer. I believe the devil invented the snooze. I bet I've said it thousands of times in my house. You can't wake up if you don't get up. I'm waking up. No, you're not. Get up. Awaken with anticipation. I don't have time for snooze. God's going to do something today. God woke me up this morning for a reason, and I want to get all up in it. Right? Awaken. Awaken with anticipation. Next idea is this. Lock on and look up. Lock on. Find your target. Hone in on it. Like a radar, if you will. And stay with it. Lock on and look up. There's a lot of people that don't get up in the morning because they're looking within. That's not a pretty sight. Or they're looking around at their circumstances or the people in their lives or the people they have to deal with or they don't want to have to deal with. Lock on and look up. Psalm 88:13 says this, "But unto thee have I cried, O Lord, and in the morning shall my prayer prevent thee." That word prevent in the Hebrew means to go before, in front of. What a bold statement. The psalmist is saying, my prayer is going to go before you, Lord. My prayer is going to meet you in the morning. I'm going to lock on to you, Lord. I'm locked on. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, however you're moving, I'm following. I'm staying right there with you. I'm locked on to you, Lord. Now that's the way to wake up. That's the way to get up in the morning. You're getting up in the morning to meet him. In the children's production, they mentioned Adam walking with God in the cool of the day. Now, I've never been really cool. And when I try to be cool, like the hip thing that I did earlier, it reveals just how uncool I am. But every day of my life, I have a cool moment. It's the coolest of moments. It's the coolest time of my everyday. I anticipate every day meeting with the Lord. Look at Psalm 5:3. The psalmist says, "My prayer shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee and look up." Look up. Far too many people, if you've noticed, they're like this. That's why this is probably the first time you've ever seen me do this. I'd rather look down at that. But too many people are looking down at this. Look up. That's where it's happening, church. That's where it's happening. We're too worried about this stuff out here. This is passing. This is passing. This is fleeting. This is temporal. The clothes you have on are going to be out of style tomorrow. Some of us, like me, they're already out of style. I mean, the songs, they come and go. Presidents come and go. Political parties come and go. That's where it's happening. The psalmist says, "My prayer shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer." Not, "I hope today's going to be a good day." No, I'm directing my prayer to you, Lord. And I'm looking up. That looking up, once again, has that idea we're carrying over from anticipation. I'm looking up. The psalmist in another place says, "Looking unto the hills from whence cometh my help." My help comes from the Lord. To look up. It'll save you some chiropractor visits. Won't have to take as much ibuprofen. You won't have to be a stiff neck. Okay. Hebrews 12:2. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He's the author of our faith. He's the finisher of our faith. And if I'm going to have the faith I need to make it through this day, I need to look to the author of my faith and the finisher of my faith. And in Philippians 1:6, Paul says, "He that hath begun a good work in you shall perform it unto the day of Jesus Christ." He's working. And do you know that everything God does is good? We see that with the evening and the morning was the first day. But before the evening and the morning, the first day, it was good. And the evening and the morning was the second day. Before that, it was good. And God saw that it was good. It was everything that he does is good. He's working all things together for my good. Oh, I'm looking up. And not just looking up, I'm looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of my faith. Because if you're a believer this morning, he's the finish line. He's the goal. Do you know that your feet follow your eyes? Some of you are like, mm-hmm. Some of you have learned it by experience. You're driving down the road and you look off and the next thing you hear is, oh. Yeah, if you're lucky. You follow your eyes, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. To wake up in the morning, looking into his eyes. Oh, good morning. Good morning, right? Good morning. The next thought is this. Hopefully here before hopping out of bed. Hopefully here before hopping out of the bed. I can't tell you how many mornings I hear him speaking to me, even as I'm waking up. There are times that I hear his voice. How many of you have ever had surgery? Anesthesia you were put under. And how many of you, as you were coming out of anesthesia, the first thing you got back was your hearing? Anybody ever experienced that? So you were put under and I can remember the first time I had surgery. I'm laying there and I could hear crystal clear, but nothing else worked. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I hardly could think, but I could hear those nurses talking and just going back and forth. And that happens to me many, many mornings. I can hear his voice. I can hear the echo of a verse that I've been meditating on. Hopefully here before hopping out of the bed. Psalm 119, 147 says, I prevented the dawning of the morning and cried. You hear that? I cried. I cried. I hoped in thy word. What is the first thing you think about in the morning? Where's that phone at? Shut up. Are you hopefully hearing, Lord, speak? Your servant is listening. Your servant is listening. I want to hear what you have to say to me this morning. You say, well, Gordon, that's never happened to me. Ask the Lord. He's no respecter of persons. And I can assure you this morning, he wants to speak to you. And his words are words of peace, as we'll soon see. Isaiah 50 verse 4 says this, the Lord God hath given me the tongue of the learned, that I should know how to speak a word in season to him that is weary. He waketh morning by morning. He waketh mine ear to hear as the learned. He waketh mine ear to hear as the learned. Notice Isaiah says, my ear is the ear of the learned before my tongue is the tongue of the learned. The Lord knows who I'm going to encounter. The Lord knew some of you, this is your first time in Solomon's Porch. The Lord knew you were going to be sitting here this morning. And the Lord wants you to hear his word. And he woke his servant up, whispering. And Jesus says to his disciples, freely you've received, freely give. What you hear in the closet, that shout from the housetops. How many of us just get out of bed last minute, putting on our last sock as we're hopping out the front door, rushing to work on 2 wheels, hoping we don't encounter our supervisor on the way in, just frazzled, stressed, hopefully here. What difference it would make if every child of God walked into work in the morning having heard from God, able to give a word to the weary. That I would be the person on the job site waiting for the two-wheel driver to come in, hair sticking out one side, dryer lint out the leg of their pants. And I was ready to tell them, God's in control. God loves you. God's got this. Isaiah said, He wakens me morning by morning. Do you know you are surrounded by people who are desperately longing for a good word? Anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. Maybe there would be less depression if more of us would hear before hopping out of bed. The next idea is start by seeking. Start by seeking. In Proverbs 8:17 says, I love them that love me, and they that seek me early shall find me. Now let me just allow some of you to relax, because you're thinking, early and me don't agree. Early can be relative. It can be relative. There are those in this room who wake up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Some don't get up till 10, 11. I don't know. We won't go any further. But it's early to you. I love them that love me, and they that seek me early shall find me. How many of us live our lives on snooze, caught off guard, trying to play catch up? And the devil and the deep blue sea meet us by 10:30 in the morning. And then we only wished we were prayed up. Because then we're playing catch up. Oh Lord, start by seeking. Let that be the first thing. You know what would be a good thing for all of us to do is make this commitment. I'm going to get some of you in just a minute, but I'll start off low. We'll be like or high, limbo. We'll lower it. Make a commitment for the next 30 days. You will not eat a bite until you hear from God's word. Now, I challenge some of you, if you really want to get serious, no coffee until you've been with Jesus. The best part of waking up. What is the best part of waking up? That's a good question that each one of us should ask ourselves. Start by seeking. What is it that gets me going every day? What is that motivation? What is that fire in my furnace? Is it coffee or whatever else I might drink or eat? They that seek me early. Now, I believe this can be early in age. And those of you who are young, I would encourage you to start seeking the Lord. Some of the great heroes of the scripture, if you will, began walking with the Lord at a young age. I also believe that it can be applied to early in a situation. Once again, you don't want to wait until the battle to start getting ready for the fight. You're probably going to get whooped. And that's why so many believers have so many bad days. How was your day? How are you doing? I'm hanging in there. Fair to middling. We say some of the dumbest stuff. I don't think Jesus ever said stupid stuff like that. Peter says, how you doing, Lord? I'm hanging in there. What? I'm on the top of the world, Peter. I'm in the Father's will. I've heard from him. I'm on mission for him. Oh. They shall find me. I've never showed up for an appointment with the Lord and he no-showed me. Now, there's been many a day he was there waiting on me, but I've never had to wait on him. Here's the next thought I want to share with you. Roll out with rejoicing. Roll out with rejoicing. Instead of, roll out with rejoicing. Psalm 30 verse 5 says this, for his anger endureth for a moment. In his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Is that true in your life? I hope it is. Joy cometh in the morning. Oh, it's another day. Joy comes in the morning. You know, Isaiah told the people who were being tempted to be discouraged for the work that God had for them, what was set before them. He says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Roll out with rejoicing. You say, yeah, but that's easy for you. You're the preacher. You don't have no problems. Okay. You never know what any particular person in this room has. You know, there's a little joke where this guy goes into this room, and outside the door there's these crosses leaning up as you lean your cross there to go into this banquet, and this fellow walks in there and he sets up his cross, and before he goes to leave he says, Lord, you know, I was just wondering maybe if I could, you know, if it wasn't too much trouble, if I could leave with that little cross over there. You know, it would just be nice to have a little break. And the Lord said, that is the cross you brought up in here. You know, we all think, oh, my life. If there's breath, there's hope. If there's breath, there's hope. You are alive this morning. And not only alive, you are here. And God is here. For where two or three are gathered together in his name, there is he in the midst. And he loves you. And he hasn't forgotten you. And he says, I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith God, thoughts of good and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope, or an expected end. God's wrote your story and you're fighting it. I don't like this chapter. Why is this person in my story? They're there for character development. See, if I'm in your story and you don't like me, God's put me in your life for your good. Because he's trying to teach you some patience maybe. Or who knows what he might be trying to teach you. But everything in your life is there for a reason. And even when you went off script, and if you're anything like me, I've done it a lot. Even when someone else thought, you know what, I want to sit down and write a little bit of your story. And they had some schemes and some plans to alter your destination and destiny. You, if you'll get this, can, like Joseph, say, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. I'm standing here this morning and I look back over 50 years of my life and it's all good. Really, Gordon, you had no problems? Oh, I've had problems. Of course I've had problems. My dad left when I was 5 years old. Oh, I didn't have a daddy growing up. Oh, and I've said it. I've used it as excuses. He was a drug addict. Oh, poor Gordon. My mom moved from place to place to place to place. Latchkey kid. Oh, I ended up with my grandparents when I was about 10 or 11. Nobody wanted me. was all part of God's plan. It's all part of God's plan. Sickness, anxiety, depression, surgeries, betrayals. He's writing a story. He's writing a story. And he's building the character in the story. And there's an expected end. And if you want, you can go ahead and flip back to the end of the book, the Bible. Wow. No more tears, no more sorrow, no more sickness, no more pain, no more sin, no more darkness. We win. It only gets gooder and gooder. The best is yet to come. Oh, do we really believe that? If we did, we'd roll out with rejoicing. We'd roll out with rejoicing. Psalm 118:24 says this, "This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." We will. I shared this before. I'm married to an eternal optimist. If I lost a leg, my wife would say, "At least you got one." I mean, she's just an eternal optimist. No matter what happens, it could be worse. It used to make me mad. Like, how are you so happy? And she would say to me, "Gordon, happiness is a choice." I said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Happiness is not a choice. Happiness is if you're happy. And if you're not happy, then you're not happy. And I'm not happy." This is the day the Lord hath made. We might, if we feel like it, if it's not raining, if I can have, Eggs Benedict instead of Pop-Tarts. No, this is the day the Lord hath made. We will rejoice. God makes the day. I make a decision. And I'm here this morning to tell you I've made the wrong decision for way too many days of my life. Way too many. And I don't have any to waste. This is the day the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Well, Gordon, what if everything's going wrong? Then rejoice. It can only get better. It can only get better. Do you know the darkest hour is just before dawn? Once again, evening and morning. We're coming from darkness into light. And that's where we're headed, church. We're going to heaven. Yeah, but look at our country and look at it. You're looking around. Look up. You're looking in the wrong direction. Jesus said in Luke's gospel, when you see these things begin to take place, what did he say? Look up. Lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. And the church is saying, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Jesus said to rejoice. We're behaving the wrong way. We're watching the news and going, It's getting close. When you see this and when you see that, and wars of rumors of war and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places, the seas roaring, rejoice. Rejoice. We're getting close, and we're closer than we've ever been. We will rejoice and be glad. I ain't got nothing to be glad about. Watch it. Watch it. Because if you don't think it's bad enough, I know somebody who can turn the heat up. If you want to murmur and complain, I know somebody who can give you reasons to do so. And you just think you got it bad right now? There's not a person in this room who doesn't have it made. Do you know we've got brothers and sisters around this world who are rejoicing? Some of them this morning walked 3 hours barefoot to a little shack, waiting for daylight, singing the whole way there to worship the Lord. and we wake up in climate-controlled houses. What am I going to wear today? We get in climate-controlled vehicles. And even if your AC is broke, you can roll the windows down and drive faster. In the speed limit, But really? Murmuring and complaining. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Psalm 59. Yes. Psalm 59:16. Sing of his steadfast love. This is a lost discipline in the church. Singing is something that believers do on Sunday mornings. Worship is something we do before the message on Sundays and Wednesdays. That's what worship has become. If you ask the majority of believers, what is worship? Well, we've got that 15, 20, 30 minutes before singing. Now, don't raise your hand. Don't answer out loud, because this one got me. This one really got me. This is the one God's just really putting the pressure on. How many of you sing every single day? If you know someone who sings a lot, you know somebody that's different than the majority. You know somebody that's living some of this stuff I'm talking about. Those who sing. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I am free. His eye is on the sparrow. Oh, and I know, no matter what the bank book might say, I know. No matter what people say about me, I know. He watches over me, right? He watches over me. Look at what the psalmist says. But I will sing of thy power. Yea, I will sing aloud. What if they hear me? Can you for once forget about yourself and focus on the Lord? Who cares if they hear you? Sing aloud of thy mercy. When? In the morning. Don't nobody ever say nothing to me until I've had my first cup of coffee. There you go. Even the rooster sings in the morning. Sing aloud of his mercy. He woke me up another day. Do you know he didn't have to do that? If God was anything like me, I wouldn't have woke up a bunch of murmuring and complaining people. I'd have just took them home in the night. Real quiet like, no fuss, no muss. And the day would be so much better. But he causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. He woke me up every day that I murmured and complained. When I griped about what my wife didn't cook or what she did cook, or I complained about what my child was doing or wasn't doing. When some people don't have a child anymore. Or some had one, lost it, some want one and can't have it. And I'm murmuring and complaining about what God gave me. I ought to sing of his mercy. For thou hast been my defense and refuge in the day of trouble. Some of you are sitting here going, I've been through so much trouble. Did you hear yourself? Been through. Look what he brought you through. And you can't rejoice. You can't sing. Oh, he brought me through. Listen to yourself. I've had a hard life, Gordon. Praise God. You're still here. You're still standing. This is why I use my Bible. This dumb thing. Okay. Psalm 90:14. He says, oh, satisfy us early with thy mercy that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Early. Early thinking of God's mercy. His mercy. Some of the world is worrying this morning about diseases and sickness. But this room, if we spent the time to testify of the healings that God has done in this little bitty room right here, of the deliverances that God has brought back. Do you know that there's people sitting in this room who have been addicted, I'm sure enough addicted to drugs and alcohol, and God has set them free. We've got people in this congregation who God's healed them of cancer, of all kinds of things. Some of you, you have debilitating diseases. God hasn't healed you, but God has given you grace to walk through it every single day. That in and of itself is a miracle. That you haven't given up, that you haven't quit, that you're still pressing. It's a testament to His mercy. Psalm 143:8 says, "Cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning." Cause me to hear your loving kindness in the morning. How might I hear His loving kindness? Maybe if I sing of it. If I sing of it, I will hear it. Oh, for in Thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto Thee. Lamentation 3:22 through 23. It is of the Lord's mercy that we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Hey, if you need a song for tomorrow morning, that's a good one. Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning. Anyway. Psalm 92, 1 through 2. It is a good thing, the psalmist says, to give thanks unto the Lord and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to show forth what? Thy loving kindness in the morning and thy faithfulness every night. Waking up to a new day, a new start, a new opportunity, new mercies every morning, just like manna in the Old Testament. It was just there. All they had to do was gather it up. All they had to do was receive it. And many of them murmured. What is this? Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots. Now think about the reasoning of the murmurer. I'm a recovering murmurer. I would rather either still be a slave or dead than to wake up every morning and trust in His provision. Forgive this preacher, you dumb. That's dumb. And that's what I sounded like for so many years. I don't feel good. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. Sing of His loving kindness, which the psalmist says is better than life. In Ephesians, Paul says that we are to sing to ourselves with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in our heart as unto the Lord. And then in Colossians, he says we should do it to one another, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Singing ought to be a part of our lives. I challenge you. I don't know how to sing, Gordon. Well, then listen to somebody else do it. Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is, get it on this thing right here and listen to somebody else do it. But it'll bless you if you'll start doing it. Just sing. Sing like nobody's listening. Dance like nobody's watching. Just praise the Lord. What might life look like? Are we afraid we might break something if we move? Are we afraid we might break our face if we smile? Lord, your loving kindness is better than life. You love me. I want you to think about that for a moment. God Almighty, the creator of the universe, loves this guy. Now you look at him. My mama claims she loved me. And this is probably a face that only a mama could love. God Almighty, the creator of the universe, loves me. Now, some of you know me more than others, and there are times I am not very lovable, but he still loves me. That's worth singing. That's worth singing about. Some of you are sitting here thinking, well, I don't know how God could ever love me. He does. He does. There is nothing you have ever done that makes him love you less. And there's nothing you ever will do to make him love you more. His love for you is a perfect love. It never will change. That's worth singing about. And singing is so much better than complaining. Now, be honest. How many of you like to be around somebody that's complaining? I don't. I used to be that person, and I never noticed it. They were speaking my language. Now when I hear it, it's like, go away. Go away. Some of you have quit smoking. And when you finally quit smoking, you smelled smoke. Before that, you didn't smell it. And then you're like, oh my God, what? That is awful. That's the way it is. When you're delivered from murmuring and you hear it, you're just like, are you kidding me? Especially when it's people you know. And you know what God has brought them through. And I just want to look at some and just start sharing their testimony to them. Probably make them mad and they'd complain. But I do. I just want to look at them. Have you forgotten that God did this for you? And God did that for you? And you remember the time when, and God did this? And you remember when God came through here, and when God did this miracle, and answered that prayer? And you're going to sit here today? I didn't want it to rain. Let's move to the evening. We got to wrap this thing up. End in exaltation. You know, the great crescendo, right? Everything should be building to that moment. Most of us, by the end of the day, we're dragging. Oh, when the saints come dragging in. Oh, when end in exaltation. End in exaltation. Lord, you brought me through. Not only did you give me this day, you brought me all the way through it. I'm going to wrap up and we're going to put another one in the history books. I can't believe it. Psalm 55:17, evening and morning and noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. Evening, morning, and noon will I pray and cry aloud. I'm reminded of Daniel. Daniel was faced with a decision, and I believe every one of us is faced with the same decision. The Lord or the lions? The Lord or the lions? Some of you, like me, you've chosen the lions. In Proverbs talks about the man who stays in the house. He's called a lazy man because he's afraid because there's a lion out there. He's got an excuse for not going out there and tackling what is before him because there's a lion out there. And you know, the Bible does tell us there's a roaring lion roaming to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. Daniel was threatened with the lions, but he chose the Lord. Evening, morning, and noon, he knelt down and said, God, I'm looking to you. I'm looking to you. I'm not going to worry about the lions. Gordon, you have no idea the dangers out there. This world's turning dark, brother. It's getting bad out there. The Lord or the lions? If you choose the Lord, like Daniel, you're just going to kneel down and say, Lord, you got this. You got this. You say, well, yeah, but look what happened to him. He ended up in the lion's den. And your point? I don't want to be in a lion's den. How would you like to walk out of one? See, we all want to walk out the lion's den, don't we? We all want to walk out and go, praise God, look what God did, look what God did. But how many of us want to be thrown in? Daniel did. But he was one that ended in exaltation. He knew how to start the day and finish the day. And notice between what the psalmist says, evening, morning, and noon. We look at noon in the middle of the day. He was praying in the middle of the day. Why? Because he started in prayer and he was determined to finish in prayer. He determined to end in exaltation. And Psalm 141:2 says, let my prayer be set before thee as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Every morning, every evening, there was a sacrifice. And the psalmist says, let the beginning of every one of my days and the end of every one of my days be like that sacrifice. The sacrifice was faithful. And you know what? Our sacrifice was even more faithful, because he gave his life once for all for sin. Surely I should exalt him for that. Surely I should glory in the cross, glory in the Lord. Psalm 113:3 says, from the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. We'll go to ball games and shout, go Tennessee! Well, only one person in this room does that, but be that as it may. I'm kidding. Pastor John loves Tennessee. I'm just giving him a hard time. I don't have a team, so I'm even worse. But anyway. But we'll go to ball games. We'll shout. We'll get excited. Hear the God of the universe. That is a miracle, church. You know how many times that happens in my life every day? I'm dead. No, I'm just kidding. But my heart is beating. And do you know what? Not one time have I made it beat. Do you know that every night I lay myself down and go to sleep, and somehow I wake up? We ought to exalt the Lord. We ought to exalt the Lord. We only got two more. Settle down and shut the door. Settle down and shut the door. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 through 27 says, be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Settle down and shut the door. To give place, that Greek word is topos, where we get topo maps. It's a specific area. To give place means to give a foothold. It means to allow the enemy to stick his foot in the door. Be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Some of you have been incubating a monster. Some of you are mad and you can't even remember what made you mad. Some of you have bitterness in your heart, things that somebody did to you or said to you when you were a kid. You say, well, I'm over that, Gordon. No, you're not. How do you know I'm not over? Because you talk about it all the time. And I can look at your face when you bring it up. How many sons went down on that? You're giving place to the devil. I'm convinced much of the sickness that people experience is due to emotional baggage that they carry around. And as the day comes to a close, it's a beautiful opportunity to stay up till 2 a.m. scrolling. Don't you? I'm going to get in trouble here. I love it when I look on Facebook and somebody's got a post and it's like 2 a.m. and they're like, can't sleep. And I'm so tempted to text them, the next morning and said, put your phone down tomorrow. Can't sleep. Don't let the sun go down upon your wrath. All your aggravations, those things that agitate you, things you're angry about, family feuds, work problems, the government, this political party, that political party. You need to give place to the devil. Every afternoon, evening, when you get ready for bed, you need to just settle down and shut the door. Not today, devil. He say, you remember what she said? I don't care what she said. Let it go. Let it go. I did. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Forgive. Earlier, I talked about my dad leaving when I was 5. I let that just mess up a whole bunch of my life. It was the dumbest thing in the world for me to do. The day that I forgave him was glorious. And that started the beginnings of a change in his life. I was sitting around waiting for him to change. But don't hold your breath. Unforgiveness is you saying the cross is not sufficient. That's what unforgiveness is. You may be here this morning, you're just mad at the world. I was mad at the world. I didn't even know why. God began to deal with my heart about why I was angry. I got angry because I didn't know why I was angry. Settle down and shut the door every day. Listen, his mercies new every morning. Think about this. I wish we had time. You lay there in bed. You shut the door. You let it go. Because in the morning you're going to wake to new mercies. I can just let it go. Some of you really need to let it go. 2 more. Lastly, calm down. Nope, there's 4 more. Calm down through communing. Psalm 4:4. Stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your heart upon your bed and be still. Selah. Do you know that when you were a baby, nobody had to tell you how to sleep? But it's interesting, as we get a little bit older, towards the toddler years, what is it about sleep that we fight? What are you fighting when you go to bed? When you lay down, you ought to start communing with your heart. Take that opportunity. Everything else is stopped. You might as well, right? Nothing else is going on. Well, unless you're addicted to one of these things. But if you turn that thing off like I do and put it away, and you turn the lights off, and here's something else I've noticed. Me and my wife, we're in 2 different schedules. She's a night owl and I'm an early bird. But they make these cool little things. I think they're called, an eye mask? Or what are you put them things on and it just puts everything in pitch. I love that thing. Oh, they're a couple bucks. You just put that thing on, you just lay down and you're in absolute darkness. And you can commune. You can commune. Because see, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, and most of us have been using it all day long to deceive ourselves and others. And the Bible says, guard your heart, for out of it flow all the issues of life. And it's a good opportunity, right? Outside of the crowds. Listen, outside of the crowds, outside of the spectators. There you are in your bed in the room, lights out, it's a good time to be real. See, some of you haven't been real in a long, long time. In Psalm 51, David says, behold, thou desirest truth in the inward part, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. You're wanting God to be real with you, but you're not being real with him. And every night is an opportunity to lay down and say, all right, it's time to deal with some stuff. It's time to come clean. Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Just be still. Just be still. Some of you are already getting uncomfortable. Just that moment you're like, did he blank out? Does he not know what to say? We feel like we have to have movement. We have to have noise. Just be still. I know people who say, Gordon, I can't be still. I just want to know, what other lies has the enemy convinced you of? God doesn't tell us to do something that he doesn't equip us to do. Be still. I would encourage you, practice it. Every day, take you like 5 minutes. Start with something, 3 minutes. Just go someplace and just sit down. Don't think of nothing. Just sit and be still. So at nighttime, you just lay there and you're not still working and solving the world's problems and figuring out what you're already trying to step into tomorrow, and you don't even know if God's going to wake you up in the morning. Do you know the Bible says that he neither sleeps nor slumbers? Last two. Tuck in and trust. Tuck in and trust. I said something several months back, and I got a lot of laughs and a lot of questions after the service because I talked about my berry blanket. It's just kind of an inside joke. That's what me and my wife call it. They sell them at Sam's. I got this big old brown, fuzzy, warm, I love it blanket. And that's what I sleep with. I don't get under the covers. She's got all the covers and the comforter. That's all I need is my berry blanket. Tuck in and trust. 2 verses as we close. Psalm 4:8 says, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. For thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Notice what the psalmist says. I will both. The psalmist says, I'm going to do 2 things. I will both, number 1, lay me down in peace. And then he says, and sleep. Many Christians aren't sleeping because they're not laying down in peace. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. Some of you are taking your past history to bed with you. Some of you are thinking about stuff that happened 15 years ago. 15 years, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You rehearse it over and over and over in your mind. Again and again. Why? Paul says, this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind. Let it go. Yeah, but Gordon, you don't know. I don't have to know. Let it go. Let it go. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. There are people who suffer from PTSD because they've experienced traumatic events in their life. And I want to encourage that individual. I've never experienced that. And so some might look at me and say, well, then you ain't got no business saying nothing to me. Well, the person who did say it was David. And he was a warrior. And he fought hundreds of Philistines at one time. He fought Goliath. He's seen some stuff. He witnessed some things. And he says, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. For you, O Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Oh. Last verse, Psalm 127:2. It is vain for you to rise up early and to sit up late. Oh, Gordon, you contradicted everything you've said all morning. No, I didn't. Keep reading. To eat the bread of sorrows. He didn't say it's vain to wake up early. He didn't say you couldn't stay up late. He says if you do either one, to eat the bread of sorrows. There's a big difference. For so he giveth his beloved sleep. What a gift. What a gift. He giveth his beloved sleep. The scripture says he neither sleeps nor slumbers. So why are we both staying up? Because somebody's got to worry about it, Gordon. I would have agreed with you years ago. But now, that somebody ain't going to be me. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep. Mark tells us of a time that Jesus was asleep in a boat in the midst of a storm. It kind of reminds me of Ivan. How many of you stayed during Ivan? Yeah, I stayed during Ivan. Why did I do that? And I stayed up all night long. And do you know what? I'm the only person in my house that even cared. I'm kidding. My wife and both my sons went to sleep and slept through Ivan. And I stayed up watching the walls go. You know, I'm still here. I made it through Ivan. I lived. And so I lost a night's sleep for nothing. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. He divided the light from the darkness. And the evening and the morning were the first day. I'm convinced it's all about evenings and mornings. And we miss them both, worrying about what's in the middle. All wrapped up with what happens in the middle. And it's not about the product. It's about the process. Every passing day, morning and evening. His loving kindness in the morning, his faithfulness every night. Responding to those two every single day. And then it doesn't matter if there's a storm or trials or sickness or sunshine or vacation or overtime or layoffs. Every morning and every evening. Some of you checked out a long time ago. Some of you stayed with me to this moment. Number one, I commend you for that. But number two, let me just challenge you. What a waste would it have been for you to pay attention through all of that, to walk out of here and continue living for the mess that's in the middle. When it's about mornings and evenings with the Lord. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much for your word today.